And I would say, you say that, Pat, but you know what's interesting? I believe that Donald Trump in the White House would be more abusive of the Constitution than Barack Obama, and that's saying a lot.
Wow.
I really believe
that's a news clip, Richard.
I really believe when you look at, he would use a blunt instrument. This president at least tries to nuance his unlawfulness.
Right.
Donald Trump has said many, many times, day one, I'll do this, I'll do that. And those things that he's mentioned cannot be done. Yeah. I think executive orders with Donald Trump would be a very blunt instrument with respect to the Constitution.
See, this is amazing because coming from you as the state attorney general and obviously the credibility you've got with our audience, you're echoing basically what Glenn Beck has been saying for months. Everything that we loathe and detest about Barack Obama and the abuses of power, Donald Trump is the same thing, except he's our bully. And even with the executive orders, because Ted Cruz has promised on day one he's going to overturn every executive order that Barack Obama's done, and so has Donald Trump. However, when confronted by a reporter who said, "Does that mean you don't believe in executive orders?" "Oh no, I'll use them, but mine will be good ones
and unapologetically."
Yeah.
I mean, this president, I've been in D.C. the last couple of days, was at the Reagan Library over the weekend, as I was sharing with you, speaking about federalism principles to Federalist Society, and this president has basically taken an approach that says that if Congress doesn't act, or they don't act the way that I want them to, then I can act in their place.
Right.
Well, that's just not how our system works. But this, if Donald Trump is the nominee and eventually the president, he would take, I think, unapologetic steps to use executive power to confront Congress in a way that is truly unconstitutional.
Yeah. It's funny because I had a conversation with my dad not long ago, and my dad is an immigrant. He came here as a young child after World War II. And he's not real long-winded like me. He summed up Donald Trump in one word. He said he's dangerous.
Your dad is very astute because I will say to you, I think he has tendencies that we see in emerging countries around the world where he goes to the disaffected, those individuals, and say, look, give me power and I will give voice to your concerns. And that's a dangerous place to be. Yeah. In rule of law today, I mean, this president has done more to injure rule of law. I mean, he owes President Nixon, an apology with respect to the use of executive power. But President Obama, we don't need to replace him with another individual. Right. As you said, our bully in the White House to do what he's done from a Republican side of things.